All right, so we started the webinar and good morning, good afternoon, hello. Uh, Welcome, and I see that we still have so many participants joining. So let us please give us maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute for some of the last people who are joining today, and then we will start. Great. And I see that the number of participants is slowly growing. So let me again welcome all of you and welcome to the fifth deep dive for the Youth for Climate. Firstly, an important note on the interpretation. So we have interpretation available and you can tune in also in French, Spanish, or Portuguese. So please, you can follow the guidance that we are sharing in the chat box and tune in into the language that you prefer. Hopefully now that everybody is tuned in and everybody hears, let me again welcome all of you in the Youth for Climate Deep Dive webinar. This one is for the topic of Digital for Planet and is organized as part of the 2025 Youth for Climate Call for Solutions. My name is Pavel, and I'm part of the Youth for Climate team based from UNDP Rome Center, and I will be the moderator for today. I also welcome our speakers, Dominique, Julia, and Theo, who kindly agreed to join us today and who will share with you some of their insights on the importance of digital and AI solutions for driving climate action and how to be responsible, leaving no one behind and causing no harm in our use of digital tools. Also, a big thanks to our interpreters, Yara, Eloisa, Jordan, Noor, and Leila. But before I open the fifth and final Youth for Climate deep dive on digital and planet, let's maybe do a bit of housekeeping. Firstly, the today's session, the fifth session, is organized as part of the Youth for Climate Call for Solutions, and we are looking for innovative ideas to tackle climate change and its impact across communities and countries globally. People from all UNDP program countries and territories can apply, either as individuals or as youth-led entities, and the call is open, and it's open for more than 2 months from now, with the deadline of May 26. So it is open to young changemakers who are between 18 to 29 years old. And this is the third call for solutions, which is organized by UNDP in cooperation with the government of Italy and a range of partners. The first two editions supported 100 solutions, and I'm glad that we will also hear from one of the awardees and about one of the solutions today. Moving forward, as I said, this is a fifth deep dive. It is a final one, but we already hosted webinars on several other topics that may be relevant for you. We heard about the application process, project design, and we also looked at some of the topics, including climate and health, as well as climate, peace, and security. I highly recommend you watching these sessions, and to do so, please go to the Youth for Climate platform, or you can follow the links that are being posted in the chat box. On today's agenda, we have three speakers. We will hear from Dominique from Digital for Planet. Dominique is a digital country coordinator and she's working on digital transformation. We will also hear from Julia, who is a digital expert at UNDP, and she will talk about also leveraging technology to create positive global impact. And also we will hear from Theo, who is founder and CEO of Ento Organics, and he is also an awardee of the Youth for Climate Call for Solutions. Before I hand it over to Dominique, let me also emphasize that we are eager to hear your questions about today's topics on digital solutions and how they can be used for benefit of the planet and for climate action. I encourage you to make use of the capacities and knowledge of today's participants and ask our speakers your questions. But please try to stay focused on the topic of digital for planet. For other questions, which I'm sure you have some, for the questions that are general about the call for solutions, let me direct you to the FAQ section on the Youth for Climate platform and also to the previous recordings of the deep dives that we already had. All of them are already available on the platform. With that, let me pass the floor to Dominique. Dominique, floor is yours.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Pavel, and thank you all. Just 1 second, I will try to share my screen. And I hope you can see the screen. Can you confirm that?
It's loading.
Just 1 moment. Yeah, no, thank you. I think it's all set now.
Yes,
thank you
it
for
works.
inviting me and for having me today, and thank you for all the organization around this webinars. And also thank you to you, the young leaders, right, that are just keen to drive transformation in terms of like sustainable development and also fight or tackle the climate crisis, as well as protecting the nature. So basically, before I dive into my presentation, I would just want to introduce myself again. My name is Dominique Niegim, and I am a young too. And I'm a global country analyst, which means that I'm supporting digital transformations at countries level. And this is scope to the nature and the climate perhaps, or even works, basically. And yeah, so today I think I just, arranged my presentation into 3 big main objectives. So which are basically to know more about the importance of digital solutions for nature and for climate, and how digital solution actually drive nature protection and tackle climate crisis, right, by boosting or maybe the climate action that we're undertaking. And then the second objective is just to show you a few examples of digital innovations and solutions that we have been in the Digital for Planet team building or designing to support the different countries that we are supporting. And yeah, and the third one is just like practical guidance as you are starting this journey or even in the middle of this journey. What are practical guidance from my own experience or expertise, and also from what I know that can be important to countries? What are the guidance that you can use or you can tap from to create impactful and scalable digital solution for nature and for climate? So yeah, I just wanted to deep dive back a little bit when it comes to the Paris Agreement, because I know that what I will be presenting is basically a bit scope into that Paris Agreement. So what is it? And I mean, some of you might know what is the Paris Agreement, and others maybe not, but just a quick background. So the Paris Agreement is that legally binding commitment that countries accept or signed to, so that they will make some pledges to reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So they do come with targets. For example, they just say, okay, we will reduce this type of emission or this amount of GHG emissions from our country. And then when they do those pledges, they have to take actions to achieve the target. And yeah, and then from those actions, what is important in the country, because they have to report on that, is also to make sure that every action, every program, so every initiative that they're undertaking in the country is actually reported to the United Nations Convention to Combat Climate Change, or even also stored in the country reports, right? So before I dive into this further, I wanted to talk about the challenges and why data and digital system are necessary for the Paris Agreement implementation. And we do have like development programs. We're noticing, and I'm sure that even from the country that we're from, we're noticing that, for example, nature initiatives are undertaken in silos compared to also climate initiatives. And all the digital event is also like, for example, we have digital solutions here, we have climate solutions there, we have nature protection initiatives in there. So everything is just not well coordinated, and it's not just well organized. We do have those fragmented policies, even the financing, even the societal actions related to digital transformation are just not well coordinated. So this is one big challenge that we face with with climate change and with nature protection. And something again also is that when it comes to climate change and to nature protection, I'm always saying both because it's closely related. But when it comes to that, we are noticing in the countries that, for example, there's this, the country, they don't necessarily have like one database where all the climate actions that are being undertaken in the countries are stored. Or even when there's this, when the data are there or somewhere, it's just spread it everywhere, right? You do have this here, you have that over there, and then we don't know about the quality. We're not sure about the accuracy. We don't know how this is valid. And something is that it's also limited to human capacity. Like, for example, managing climate information somewhere is just limited to human capacity with sometimes high people. Like today we do have this climate information under this organization, and then tomorrow the organization is no longer there or there's something happening. And so basically, where is the place of digital into this? As I was saying, we do have nature and we have climate. Those are closely related. And the Digital for Planet is like an integrated offer between nature and climate hubs within UNDP. And it's just as a flagship initiative for digital support to countries. So basically, it's Digital for Planet is there to drive transformation for nature and climate. It's like a key enabler, right, to support the nature hubs in UNDP objective, as well as the climate hubs initiative. And to do so, we from the Digital for Planet team, we're going with that digital public goods approach that my colleague Julia will dive into it further. But so far, a digital public good is basically the open source, open standard, open approach where you build a system or you build a tool that can be available to a whole to the community. So from our perspective, we do believe that if national capacities are strengthened to integrate digital transformation with nature and climate, regardless if it's like policy or financing or even actions, then the progress, every single effort that are done for nature and for climate goal will just be scaled, right? Accelerating human development within the planetary boundaries. And this, why do we believe that? Because digital solutions or infrastructure or even connectivity will provide to the government organizations and to the people, to the communities as well, the tools and the data that the whole of society system needs for climate action, to boost all the different effects of the actions and to protect the nature and to tackle the climate and the climate crisis. So now it's just like UNDP Digital for Planet, like what are the open source software and digital transformation that we support that we're bringing to the countries. So before I dive into few of the solutions, I wanted to like very much give this quick background because again, the solutions that I will be presenting are very much related to this. And as you will see, it's just about, when we talk about climate change, we talk about like greenhouse gases emissions, right? And under the Paris Agreement that I introduced earlier, there's this, the Paris Agreement actually allows for carbon trading of carbon credits under the Article 6, and which enable the countries to trade the GHG emissions reductions, supporting the nations in achieving their NDC. So the NDCs is the nationally determined contribution. So basically those are what, as the name says, it's just like what are my contributions as a nation to reduce the GHG emissions from the atmosphere. So, so the purpose of like installing or allowing for carbon trading between countries or between even communities or like, locally in the country, the aim is to promote investment in low carbon technologies and also sustainable practice, and with the end goal and or end vision to reduce the GHG emissions from the atmosphere. So, and then when the countries, since they've pledged that they would do so, since they've signed or they've agreed with the Paris Agreement, they have to report, right? You can't just say, okay, we will do that, and then you're not showing that you're actually doing it. So to do so, they must transparently report on the mitigations outcomes. And then those are basically the result of the mitigation actions or the adaptation actions that you're doing. And then you have to report on that. Is it something, have you reduced the GHG emission, and are you using that to count those towards your effort? Or are you selling or are you trading that with another country so that they can count that towards their effort? And just a quick definition again, the carbon credit here is like, it's a tradable certificate that represents 1 metric ton of CO2 or its equivalent, right? That was reduced, avoided, or removed from the atmosphere. And I hope this this part is a bit clear, because now you'll see how based on that little background, what do we do? So at the UNDP for Planet team level or initiative, so what we're doing, that we've done so far, we have designed and developed a national, what we call, right, a national carbon registry. And we've developed that as a digital public good, which means the code base. So the system is just up, the code base is open, free. And then every country can just take the code base and customize it to its national context and use that now to record all the carbon projects, and then also to issue and track carbon credits. And of course, now to report to the UNFCCC. So basically, it's that system that supports countries into the collections and then the organization and the reporting of data on GHG emissions, and as well as on all the different activities that are undertaken to reduce or to remove from the atmosphere a certain amount of greenhouse gases. So that is one of the tools that we've designed. And beside that, we've also designed another system that we're working to have it also digital public good, so open source. And this is called the National Climate Transparency System. So the National Climate Transparency System basically is just like a MRV tool. So MRV means like measurement, reporting, and verification. It's a system that supports, again, the countries to manage climate information. For example, let us say a country has, those like actions that they're taking, taking to reduce the GHG. They have those projects, they have those policies, they have those, any initiative, they've even received support from partners to remove or to reduce greenhouse gas initiative. Where do they usually store the data? It is in the National Climate Transparency System. So it's just so it will collect the information at the granular level, at the government level for now, and then, arrange that information in a way that it is easier at the end of the journey or of the 2 years to report to the UNFCCC. Because of the Paris Agreement, they have to do that. So the system, again, is just to organize climate actions, program project activities, and support. And then all the information are just integrated or automatically fill what we call the common tabular format. It's how they have to report it. So all the information that they do during the year, the 2 years, are just automatically populated in the tabular. So that when it comes to reporting, they would just take it, upload it as the CSV or Excel file, and then share it for reporting. Yet just a quick history is that before that, if they don't have it, they will have to, at the time of reporting, go with 8 different ministries, government, and then ask for the information. It can be tedious and then time consuming, and it requires a lot of effort from staff. And we've also designed, and this is in partnership with CAFI. CAFI is like the Central African Forest Initiative. We've also designed a system around the payment for environmental services scheme. So what is the payment for environmental services framework? So basically, before we dive into the system, right? The framework behind is that it is just that initiatives that incentivize farmers, for example, or communities to protect their environment, and then to drive, for example, to drive sustainable use, I don't know, of a farm or water, or protect the ecosystem that you're living in, either by taking actions such as reforestation or even agroforestry. So basically, it's that framework or scheme that allow the farmer to protect the environment, the biodiversity, also conservation. And then the purpose of it is that to reduce, right, the alteration of, for example, the land, or even also to promote, conservation of the environment that they live in. And the vision or the purpose of the scheme is to, by doing that, the farmers are compensated for their effort. They can be compensated in a monetary way or in any other way. And that type of regulation or scheme is usually undertaken in countries like just, separately, or all the information are not stored somewhere. It's just been done, but there's no platform that's sustained or can ensure the transparency, or we can say that, okay, in 5 years we come and then we see that this has been done in this specific area. So we've built the PESS system, and it is a digital MRV tool designed to support the PESS scheme, to ensure that ensure the data integrity and then transparency and scalability, to enhance environmental conservation and reforestation effort led by community. So the key features of the system are just that it will support the management of farmers' contracts, because to do that, farmers, they need to have contract with other parties, with partners. So it supports the management of those contracts. It also supports the field data collection and verification, because, I mean, as a farmer, you say that you will do it, but we need proof. You need to store the information somewhere. You need to prove that you are doing what you say you will do. So the system also supports data field collection and verification, and it's also supporting the payment calculation and validation for farmers. And yeah, and another important or exciting tool that we have built is the traceability system. And what is the traceability system? So basically, a quick introduction of the tool is just that digital, again, MRV measurement, reporting, and verification modular tool designed to track deforestation-free commodities using geospatial data to guarantee that the coffee is grown sustainably and responsibly. It's just to support the EUDR regulation. So, for example, just to explain a little bit further, you have that European Union deforestation regulation, which says that you should not, for example, export coffee that is like had been produced on based on deforestation, and then you want to prove that the coffee that you're building is not coming from deforesting a very vast area. So there's this possibility of like having those polygon and point validation in the tool that will track where the coffee was produced until at least you sell that out to partners. And then the purpose is to show that the product is actually deforestation free. And why? Because it supports the climate actions. So we do have other solutions. I won't dive into all of them, otherwise I think I'll take all the time. But yeah, other solutions, we also have this Green Digital Readiness Assessment. Basically, it's just an exercise that we're taking to assess the preparedness of a country in terms of digital transformation for nation climate. So we do have also Nature ID as a digital public infrastructure. We also have partnership with XPRIZE Technologies. It's just like a global leader into organizing competitions to and as for example, this one to be able to see what are the innovative technologies that are out there that can support, for example, biodiversity monitoring. And we also have this Polygon Teacher that we build on the traceability system. So we have many initiatives that we're undertaking also to drive digital transformation for nature and for climate. So based on the solutions that I just provided, I thought it would be also fantastic to share with you a few tips if you're thinking of having, for example, a digital, innovative idea for nature, for climate and nature. And again, I'm saying that nature and climate because it's intrinsically linked. So yeah, so the few tips or tip that I can have for this one is that I will just start by a design thinking approach. For example, it's just, again, your idea, it has to be user-centered design. So you have to think about the user of whatever initiative that you or solution that you're bringing for climate. For example, this is just from past lesson learned. We've built and from past actually experience where a project builds something from in the country, and then the application couldn't function with internet. So which is something that we're learning, right? For example, if you're building something for farmers in a very remote area, you might want to think about an application or something that will just be able to collect data even without internet. And then when the person is where there's like the connection, it will just automatically populate the data in a database. So it's just those little things that you want to consider when designing a solution. And yeah, and also the second thing that I want to say is that the solution that you're designing, it doesn't have to be something you're starting from scratch. It's important to also leverage from existing digital tools and platform. And for example, it's just, yeah, I've presented few initiatives, few systems. It's important, like you can bring a little piece or a part of the system, and that is still a contribution. You can innovate with well, not innovate, but you can come in or bring in AI as well. For example, you have this framework for this framework for climate, and then you want to see how those aligns using AI. It's just like, tapping into what already exists and then leverage from that. That is also valid. And the third point that I wanted to raise is that it has to be sustainable, right? And then scalable. Scalability is an important point. For example, I presented the digital public goods system that we are building, and the effectiveness of that is that, like, instead of supporting one country at a time to build the same tool, we are just building one tool for many countries, right? It's just easily scalable at the end. It's just like you're doing that, you're building that, and then you're dispatching it broadly. So you might want to think also about something that is open source that other communities can benefit from, and other countries even, why not, can benefit from, because that way it's fostered that interoperability between the systems at the end of the day. And about sustainability, for example, you're building something, think about data storage. Where is it stored, how long, and so on. So basically, these are just few tips that I wanted to give when you're thinking about building digital solutions for climate and nature. Yeah, I think I hope I'm on time. I will just pause here, and I'm happy to take any questions around this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dominique. Thank you for your presentation and for putting all of us up to speed on both some of the achievements, but also the challenges that we are facing, and also what UNDP does and some of the tools that we already employ or that can be employed. I'm also during your presentation seeing that we were receiving some comments in the chat about what kind of solutions are sought after or eligible for the call for solutions for Youth for Climate. So maybe a little bit recapitulating on what you said. It can be frontier digital technologies such as AI, Internet of Things, blockchain. It can be digital technologies and solutions applied to agriculture, energy, manufacturing, transport, and also it can be initiatives that leverage digital technologies to generate value shifts and transforming behaviors and narratives surrounding nature and climate crises. All of these come from the guidelines, which are available in 4 languages, and they are available at the Youth for Climate platform and also on the link posted in the chat. And with that, thank you so much, Dominique, for this really great overview and putting us up to speed. And you touched upon some of the topics that I also think Julia wants to talk about. So without further ado, floor is yours, Julia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pavel, for that introduction, and Dominique for such an insightful presentation. Let me also share my screen. Okay. I hope you can see it.
Yes, all good.
Okay, great. All right, so maybe before starting, I wanted to present myself. My name is Giulia Vitaiano, and I'm a digital expert working at the United Nations Development Program. I've been working for the past year now on the co-design and now implementation of the AI Hub for Sustainable Development, which is an initiative that was born out of the collaboration with the G7 Italian presidency and UNDP as its knowledge partner in the presidency. The co-design phase was sort of finished at the end of 24, and now we're in the implementation phase. Today I just wanted to touch upon the sort of aspect of digital public goods and how that includes obviously the ethical use of artificial intelligence, and then how artificial intelligence is really thought inside the UNDP for sustainable development, and then double click specifically on the AI Hub for Sustainable Development. And I also wanted to mention that it's great to be here today and just sort of see. I was looking at the chat and already at the incredible questions and sort of all the insightful comments that we're already receiving. So really, it's a pleasure to be here. So without further ado, let me just go to this slide and just generally explain what digital public goods are and why they're so relevant for digital solutions in general. But as Dominique was saying before, they are anything that can be like open source software, open data, open AI models, so open content that of course have to abide by sort of best practices and privacy laws and respect really the human rights also on the digital space, but they support the also achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. As UNDP, we are part of the board of the Digital Public Good Alliance, and it really aims to be a multi-stakeholder initiative with really a mission to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and through understanding what can be really best practices and investment in digital public goods. And so here I also outlined some of the sort of principles of the digital public goods, which is of course relevance to SDGs, open licensing, clear ownership, and then platform independence. And these are, all principles that are also outlined by the Digital Public Good Alliance, and in which UNDP also sort of contributes through the various sort of programmatic areas that it works under the digital area. And then we see here that leveraging digital public goods in solutions means, of course, scalability and adaptability. So really sort of how open source solutions can be adaptable and sort of tailored to different contexts, and then cost effectiveness, of course, and sort of reduces development costs and maximizes resource allocation, and then community engagement and sort of encouraging continuous improvement through collaboration and co-creation in a way. And then what it means to also design digital solutions and really sort of aligning with the digital public goods, and that this means ensuring that we can have interoperability and integration of these systems. And then compliance and sort of aligning with, as mentioned before, sort of privacy laws and best practices. And then also, of course, promoting inclusivity, which means sort of designing the models for different users, for, different audiences, ensuring accessibility. And I also wanted to double click on a specific initiative to sort of advance on the digital public goods. And this is something that is led specifically by the Chief Digital Office of UNDP. And this is, a platform basically that was created to really connecting also the multi-stakeholder community. So Digital X really works with governments, with UN agencies, with development partners, with countries. And it works really to identify and support high impact DPGs aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. It facilitates fundings and partnerships, providing technical support, and then, of course, strengthening the global digital ecosystem through really, again, collaboration and co-creation. And here I just wanted to align why it's important to bridge digital public goods and artificial intelligence and sort of how they interlink. But basically, like, the sort of baseline here is that digital public goods really provide the foundation for ethical artificial intelligence, to ensure that artificial intelligence models can really be sort of inclusive and adaptable to various contexts and sort of tailored to each necessity, of course, depending on the community also that is developing AI models. And so these the AI models built on digital public goods really benefit from, again, the principles I outlined before, so transparency, interoperability, and global accessibility, especially because we see that nowadays AI models are really in the hands most of the time of sort of monopolization of global north, specifically sort of companies or countries. And so we really want to make sure that digital public goods can be also an enabler for AI models. And then, of course, AI models should be in line with sort of DPG principles and can drive really innovation and sort of equitable distribution of AI around the world. And this leads to really a local impact. So what it means for sort of AI models to be built across principles of inclusivity and make sure that they represent and they empower local communities and sort of foster innovation and address global challenges like climate change and healthcare, to just name a few. And here, going more in the topic of really artificial intelligence and its power to sort of drive sustainable development, we see it across several areas like energy and sustainability, biodiversity and environment, healthcare, education. And this is something important because we see that AI really has the potential to sort of accelerate the AI revolution globally, basically. But of course, this needs to be tailored to a really sort of inclusive approach. And here we see some of the challenges that currently some of the countries are facing in sort of adapting to this AI revolution, AI area. And we see that there's of course a digital divide, and nearly 1 in 3 people still lack access to internet globally. There's a concentration sort of AI development, as mentioned before, to a few tech giants based in the global north, and there are still gaps, significant gaps when it comes to investments, resources, infrastructure in the global south, and sort of in building their local AI ecosystems. And here we find this gap is quite important, and according to PwC's sort of research, we see that only 10% of the economic impact generated by AI will actually benefit the global south. And so this is at this point sort of the question that we have to pose ourselves, right? And I'm talking about we as international organizations, but also we as global sort of multi-stakeholder community. So we are at really like an inflection point where we must choose between these two paths. Do we want to sort of go toward the path of inaction where basically the status quo as it is right now really exacerbates and accelerates the digital divide and really threatens to also deepen the existing inequalities and prevents developing countries to really be the drivers of the AI revolution? Or do we want to go towards the path of equitable AI, where the promise of artificial intelligence for sustainable development really will sort of help to unlock some key elements and really create economic opportunities, socioeconomic sort of opportunities, drive job growth, harness sort of the dynamism and innovation globally. And this is what we are also working towards at UNDP. But really what we found out is that, of course, there's a need for scale and speed, but we need to act on what we consider the foundations of artificial intelligence, which are data. So meaning inclusive data sets that facilitate the development of locally relevant AI tools, green compute. So what we mean is that we need sort of computing infrastructures that, of course, are sustainable, are affordable, and are also accessible. And then we need more partnerships and financing to drive investments in local AI ecosystems in the global south, trust and safety, because of course we need safeguards that can support countries in implementing trust and safety measures. And then, of course, ecosystem capacity and readiness to really strengthen the local capacity to drive these efforts forward. And I really want to highlight that the robustness of AI foundations can determine either sort of success factors or potential pitfalls in AI development. And I just outlined here a few. So, of course, success factors means that developed AI solutions can sort of bring in, again, sort of diverse and inclusive data sets to avoid bias and ensure fairness, ensure energy efficient AI models, foster ethical AI practices, support regulatory frameworks that really promote trust and safety use, accountability, and responsible AI governance. And then some of the pitfalls are, of course, over-reliance on high resource AI models then can contribute to environmental degradation. And we see that, of course, with the sort of data centers that are extremely sort of environmentally dangerous and that are mostly in the hands, again, of a few sort of companies or countries around the world. And then sort of widening digital divide by sort of creating the AI solutions that are not accessible to low income communities. And then, of course, we also risk sort of lacking diverse representation when it comes to training AI models. And so this leads to bias, whether they are racial bias, gender bias, etc. And then failing to really address sort of the ethical risks, including misinformation, disinformation, and potential misuse of AI. And so UNDP vision is really trying to accelerate progress towards, of course, sustainable human development, while, of course, promoting human rights. And this means, again, working towards ethical, transparent, and sustainable development and deployment of AI technologies, and also making sure that this deployment contributes to the global initiatives that are focused on really safeguarding and advancing human dignity, equality, justice, and sustainability. And these are just some of the UNDP offers on artificial intelligence. And again, we have the artificial intelligence landscape assessment, which really work specifically with governments to understand their sort of readiness also in deploying artificial intelligence systems and making sure that they abide by some of the principles that I outlined before. And we are actually working on expanding the scope of AILA towards also making sure that the private sector is particularly involved in this effort, and we can make sure that they also abide by some important safeguards, and that they work towards the development of artificial intelligence systems that are, of course, sort of respective of trust and safety measures, and that they work also on the robustness of those AI pillars that I mentioned before. And then we work with national AI strategy development. So as UNDP and being present in more than 170 countries, we work specifically on the ground with governments and sort of the multi-stakeholder community to understand how we can support their AI strategy development. And this also leads to AI capacity building. And then the AI Hub for Sustainable Development, in which I will sort of explain in a few seconds. We work on low resource language digitization, by which we mean making sure that AI models and systems integrate not only high resource languages, so for instance, like English, Spanish, Portuguese, or French, but are representative of those languages that are statistically sort of low resourced. And then we have some of the more technical support systems like the CDO Studio, so with technical to development, and then with accelerator labs that are present in more than 100 countries, and they work also with the local innovators on the ground. And so here I go to the AI Hub for Sustainable Development. So as mentioned before, the AI Hub is really an initiative born out of the G7 Italian presidency, especially with the Ministry of Enterprises and Made in Italy. And the AI Hub really aims to be a sort of a platform, multi-stakeholder platform to strengthen local AI ecosystems in African countries in particular, and accelerate innovation and responsible private sector partnerships on the foundational elements that underpin AI's potential for sustainable development. And these are here, as you can see on the screen. And as mentioned before, we have data, so really sort of having representative data sets, green compute, human talent, so really building also like local talent on the ground in countries, and then an enabling ecosystem, by which we mean supporting the development of sort of just and inclusive policy frameworks. And here I sort of outlined some of the sort of pilot programs that we designed throughout 2024. And these pilot programs were sort of like a base test for us to understand whether our sort of thinking, our theory of change models would work. And these were done in partnership with African countries and with local stakeholders on the ground, because really the point is that we want to make sure that the sort of African countries, in the specific case of the AI Hub, are really empowered by the tools that are necessary to really drive forward the AI revolution. And these are, we call them the learning by doing pilots, right? Because they taught us how really we could also use these foundations to really build upon then the next phase of the AI Hub, really in the implementation phase. And some of these were the AI Startup Accelerator pilot, which ran until November 2024, and it really aimed to foster AI-driven industrial innovations benefiting local communities. And we selected just a few startups from African countries, and we sort of worked with them, and we worked in partnership with some international organizations like ITU, so the International Telecommunications Union, like we worked with the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences, as well as Innovit, an Italian innovation hub in San Francisco, to really give them training and sort of strengthening their knowledge about why it's so important to have robust foundational elements to build then AI solutions and AI models. And then the second one is language as public goods. And it's sort of like it was a 4-month sort of initiative that builds also on the wider experience and expertise of UNDP in low resource language digitization. And this one in particular explored scalable partnership models to integrate African languages into AI, addressing issues such as digitizing local languages at scale, data governance and community ownership, cross-sectoral partnerships and big tech engagement, and use cases and technologies for industrial growth. And the last one that is actually still ongoing, and it's on trust and safety in AI systems. And the program invites innovators from the public and the private sector to really submit proposals around gathering practical data on how AI systems create harm in local context, building foundations for equitable AI development, and then exploring really safety by design partnerships for AI development. And here I'm listing some of the current initiatives, and I just want to start with the AI Hub flagship of the African Green Compute Coalition. And please note that this is still under design, but we're particularly excited about this because we think that compute is such a critical element of building resilient and sustainable AI models. Really, without compute, we can't really. The global South and sort of developing countries can't really afford to then bridge the gap that exists right now with global North countries. And so, our motto is from Africa and partners for Africa. We have green compute, really where compute power is abundant, affordable, and supports Africa's vision for a self-sufficient, resilient, and industrial growth. And this is a little bit of a context of why we think that this is so important to build and to build now. So to really have the momentum, seeing such a also a huge expansion of sort of innovators, of researchers, and then sort of a huge talent pool of talent across Africa. To build on this momentum and really bring forward a green compute coalition in the continent. And the current context is really that there is again this growing AI and machine learning ecosystems, and there's increasing internet penetration and mobile connectivity. For instance, 37% of Africa's population is now online, and over 500 million smartphone users are projected this year. And then we have sort of more data localization regulations in some African countries that also contribute to sort of understand the demand for local data centers. And then sort of the Green Compute Coalition really wants to sort of understand what the current situation is, and then try to also bridge some of the current barriers and sort of critical gaps that exist on the continent. And so it aims to be a partnership platform coordinating sustainable AI compute access across Africa, transforming barriers into enablers. Some of the barriers that we research and we think are critical to address are limited data centers, because Africa has a limited number of data centers. And so the continent hosts approximately 2.1% of the globe's data centers, with sort of South Africa leading in the continent. And I think there's also one in Morocco. And then we have low cloud adoption, and sort of despite the sort of growth in data centers, there's still sort of a low cloud computing adoption in Africa. And we see here that it's like 15% compared to 71% in Europe, for instance. We have few supercomputers, Notably, we have the one Toubkal in Morocco. We have one in South Africa. But this is basically very, very scarce compared to the actual quantity of supercomputers that Africa would need to meet the demand. There's uneven distribution of compute resources because these are just like spotted across some countries in Africa, but not equally distributed across the continent. And then, of course, there's the high costs and accessibility barriers, because in Africa, it's much more than in developed countries. And this means that the price of a GPU, which is basically the software unit to build actually compute infrastructure, and sort of the percentage of GDP per capita can be 10 to 30 times more expensive than in benchmarked developing countries. We now come to the sort of second current initiative, and again, this builds on the pilot program that we did in the first phase of the co-design of the AI Hub. This builds upon also again the wider work that UNDP is doing in trying to digitize low resource languages. And here we sort of focus on, under the data pillar of the AI Hub, we focus on making high quality data sets available to enable more accurate and representative AI solutions. We are currently focused on these 4 key areas. So enabling access to local communities, thereby also trying to democratize the development of AI solutions. Digitize and process, so really supporting the digitization and processing of local languages, and make sure that they are culturally relevant content to enhance the availability of data for AI applications. Data licensing models, and sort of developing innovative data licensing that protect community ownership. And then capacity building in terms of really empowering the local communities on the ground, and individuals with skills to participate actively in the AI value chain. And a practical sort of result of this work is a work in progress, but we hope that it will be published by the end of spring. And it's a community paper that really is an output of the language pilot program that we did in 2024, and it gathers feedback, insights, and sort of all the viewpoints of the various stakeholders that we involved in the pilot program. And really, we would like this community paper to be a little bit of a baseline on where we can start and what we can do. And so we will highlight also the sort of critical gaps that we identified in this research phase and what we can learn from them. And then last one is really the AI Trust and Safety Reimagination Program, which is a larger sort of UNDP project, but then is also aligned with the AI Hub under the Enabling Environment pillar. And this one specifically aims to ensure that AI systems are fair, inclusive, safe, and uphold human rights. And this means addressing the trust and safety gap in AI systems. And particularly, we would like to cooperate with the private sector, because in the end, the private sector is really a sort of key when it comes to developing and deploying AI solutions. And so the program really seeks to gather practical experiences and data on how AI products and systems manifest new risk that creates harm in local context. We also focus on laying the foundations for equitable and safe AI development ecosystems that support local startups and the safe application of AI, and then exploring innovative partnerships that ensure sort of safety by design in the stage of AI development and deployment. And this is important because we see today that sort of the reality is that we have sort of trust and safety systems and AI models managed by private companies with liability placed on companies reactively. We have a globally scaled, universally applied policies risk sort of replicating also colonial governance models that threaten the principles of sovereignty of these systems. And then we also have reactive crisis-focused models where basically sort of priorities are ranked by severity of harm, imminent risk, and market priorities. And what we would like to sort of promote with the AI Trust and Safety Reimagination program is something completely different, which is a more sort of shared responsibility, right? So really collaboration and co-creation, co-designing governance practices in the private and public sector partnerships. So really to distribute equally responsibility and diffuse liability. We would like to bring in locally empowered and relevant sort of solutions to also sensitize to the public interest as determined by cultural context. And then we would like to also focus our attention on proactive, anticipatory, and adaptive sort of models. So mitigate systemic risks in proactive ways that are adaptive to emerging risks and harms. And with this, I thank you very much, and apologies, I probably took a little bit of the time, but I also leave here some further resources and ways to connect with us and to engage in the AI Hub work. And yeah, let me just hand it over back to Pavel. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you for bringing up some of the very important points, including the concept of digital public goods and the challenges with the digital divide, and also some of the safeguards for responsible use for the AI and digital tools. Let me now pass the floor to Theo. Over to you, Theo. Floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
And Theo, just very sorry to jumping back, but for the sake of time, we have 5 minutes for your intervention. Thank you so much.
Oh, cool. No worries. Okay. I hope everybody can see my screen now. Hello, everybody. My name is Theophilus Delali Dubenyo from Ghana, and I'm the founder and CEO of Ento Organics, which is a solution that is an innovative digital solution that we're bringing to smallholder female farmers. The current issue with regards to agriculture in in Africa, is that it is not so sustainable, and it is much more exacerbated by climate change and erratic weather conditions that farmers face. This has reduced the agricultural yield for farmers, and much more even drastically, what we are seeing is that we cannot be able to tap into innovative as well as technological or digitally driven solutions because of the issue of the gap when it comes to literacy, as well as other infrastructure challenges that we have so far as digitalization is concerned. And that's where Ento Organics or e-Organics comes in to help these farmers. What we are is that we provide digital agricultural solutions whereby we have real-time IoT-based devices that we insert within the farmers of our beneficiaries to collect data on soil health, on crop yield, and on water use. And based on this data, we then analyze this data to tailor solutions or recommendations for farmers, as in to apply much more organic soil fertilizer use, or even to understand their farms and map out their farms through our platform. In addition to that, what we also do is that we give training for farmers on agroforestry because of the issues of droughts. And also we actually have training services for farmers on the line of sustainable agriculture, as well as upscaling to embrace, agriculture in its, form with our digital platform. What we do is that we currently use actually technology, and we actually have a platform that we have all of these things on. We have IoT sensors, we have drones and etc. that help to collect this data on the farms. And when this data is collected, we actually make sure that we are tailoring solutions for these farmers that we've onboarded on our platform. Currently, we have over 2,000 farmers onboarded on our platform, and the market opportunity for this is quite huge because currently Africa's agricultural economy is still a major contributor of GDP across the continent. And we want to make sure that we tap into that agriculture to be able to make the defining change that we want so far as farming is concerned. Our business model is quite simple. We operate on a subscription-based model for the IoT services that we render, and also for our training services also, we charge per that. Also, in addition to that, we have a couple of IoT sales for the devices if the farmers want to, and also our agroforestry services that we give to these farmers. Our traction has been tremendous. We have impacted over 2,000 rural farmers in 3 farming communities in Ghana, which includes Obratre, Belenum, and Papase communities. And also, we've been able to actually start a pilot phase through the Australian Direct Aid Program back then 2 years. And then now, you know, we have been able to create much more traction around UNDP for climate, IUCN, as well as many other, you know, accelerator programs. For us, one thing that's very, very much important is how we are bringing digital solutions into remote areas and empowering people. We understand the issues on the ground, but we work together with communities to develop these solutions, where we have community liaisons that tap into our platforms, and these liaisons are directly, you know, responsible for issues with regards to much more change or even support with regards to the platform. This is a wonderful team, and thank you very, very much. I always say to each and everybody out there who is an agri-entrepreneur or a digital solutions entrepreneur, it is possible, and it is possible because of you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Theo. This was amazing, both in content and also in keeping to the time. I see that we actually received a big number of questions to all the different presentations and interventions, but let me also mention that there are some more resources on this topic, and as a Youth for Climate, we did another webinar in January where we also heard from other awardees, so there will be a link in the chat box that you can follow. But then, without further ado, from some of the questions, let me address our panelists with the first one. I think we will go to Dominique. And if you can tell us a bit more from your expertise, what makes a digital solution innovative? Where is digital innovation most needed when it comes to climate and nature? Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, I think that's an interesting one. Yeah, no, basically from experience and from recent updates and trends, I would say that yeah, a digital solution is innovative when it leverages emerging technologies to solve a very much complex problem in a more efficient and scalable and also impactful way. And I think today's innovation in digital solutions often comes from, you know, for example, integrating AI, talking about blockchain technologies, and then Internet of Things, as well as remote sensing, or even big data analytics. For example, there's this XPRIZE global partner that we do have. They've organized a competition where they were able to survey, I think it was thousands of hectares, I can't remember, or 24 hectares, something like that, in 24 hours. So basically, you can imagine how tedious that work can be. So innovating just means also to have things like, you know, very much tap into analyzing big, large data in a shortened time. And of course, I won't skip without saying, I won't miss user-centric. For example, you do have to, like, you know, not to increase the digital divide. And then you can also build something that is very much adaptable. And when it comes, for example, to nature and to climate, I think climate specifically, I'll go with, like, you know, having something that can reduce, for example, the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, or not reduce, but not remove, because that can necessitate bigger or like large funding, but at least reduce like agroforestry, and then have those apps that can support that type of activities. And also, I won't just skip the climate adaptation, right? It's not only about mitigation, but also climate adaptation, for example, you know, prevent on risk and other initiatives. So basically, that is literally just what came to my mind directly. And I hope I responded to your question.
Yes, I think so. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think some of these examples are really important. And that also brings me to the other question, that is on if all of you that shared your views today, if you have any tips how to build digital solutions that have a localized approach, and maybe if you could share a little bit more about how applicants can leverage some of the digitally public available goods in their work and proposals moving forward. This can go both to you, Dominique, or to Julia, also Theo.
I'm not sure I captured the...
So how we can use some of the digital public goods in the work and in the preparation of proposals. So some of the maybe existing technology, some of the existing things that are available, how this can be beneficial for the participants, if you have any concrete examples.
Yeah, I'll just take a little piece and maybe Julia and Theo will complement. But just from what we're doing at UNDP, for example, I presented the climate transparency system. So it's just like a platform where we're collecting data at the government level, but the data is actually at the granular level, at the community level. It's not collected. And then also even sometimes data at the private sector level also is not connected from in our tool. And I think being able to have to build something that is like digital MRV, like that can collect granular data and support maybe your government into the exercise can be a good way of supporting. And of course, by doing that, again, leveraging or opening the code base so that at least it's not only closed to you, depending on if you're a business or depending also on your business model, but it's good to have something that other can benefit from, and then that can support the collection of granular data, because that is an exercise that requires a lot of like hands-on. It's not only one person cannot do that. So having like partners or organization or even your initiative that can support the collections of information data at a granular level through digital MRV or measure instant real-time emissions, for example, from a reforestation project, that can be fantastic.
Yeah, I also wanted to also, mention that when you look at digital solutions, specifically within the context of, the South, it's very, very much important to understand the lack of infrastructure and also the lack of data that people generally need to have to analyze or to use that data, to create solutions. And so what is really, really necessary is that you do broad stakeholder consultations with regards to the local communities in which you are in, to clearly understand what the problem is and clearly how you could tap into or leverage on digital solutions. And I think that's beautiful about these publicly goods, is that it gives you data in areas in which you could have and you could not have. So you could see data for European countries on things like, carbon markets or a carbon market infrastructure system. But if you look into those groups and you see the case for Africa or even in other global South countries, it is then that you can be able to analyze and say, you know what, there's a gap here. What is the response in regards to local communities, and how could you merge those two things to be able to create a solution that can impact with the scale at which you want to create? And I think that's very, very much important when you're looking at, digital solutions or solutions of this nature, generally. Yeah.
Thank you so much, both of you. Did you want to add anything, Julia?
Thank you so much, Pavel. I actually also wanted to sort of link in the chat some of the sort of current UNDP initiatives that I think might be useful for participants here to see and have a look at. But just to say that I mean, what Dominique and Theo, I think, highlighted is extremely important. And, as UNDP, we want to make sure that we really leverage digital public goods across the various areas of digital technologies, and we want to make sure that they are equally sort of accessible for the local communities on the ground for sort of developing and deploying. So maybe I will just share a couple of links that I think could be useful for participants here to just dive in deeper.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm sure that participants will appreciate. And there was another question that appeared several times in different versions in the chat. In general, on the impacts on water when we use some of the modern tools, including especially the AI. So if you have any tips for applicants on how to make use of AI without actually impacting the water resources, or how to minimize the negative impact that is associated with also use of artificial intelligence.
Thank you so much, Pavel. Maybe I will just quickly sort of begin with the questions, and then obviously like pass it over to colleagues in case they want to add. I think that this very much links to what I was sort of discussing before and explaining about sort of how the foundational elements of artificial intelligence are important when it comes to then sort of building and developing and deploying AI systems. And so in this particular case, we see that, those AI systems most of the time don't take into consideration, right, environmental sort of resources that are needed. And we saw that sort of compute is in this case is like such a fundamental sort of critical gap and sort of pillar to address. And so, for instance, we see that even in the building of data centers, or even like internet points, or all GPU regional clusters across countries, we see that all these sort of elements are incredibly sort of how to say, they expect like a huge quantity of energy, of water, of even renewable sources. So that's why we think that it's important to have like such a strong foundational sort of elements in place. And this is something that, of course, is not a given, and it's not easy to solve, and something that we ourselves are still trying to understand how to unlock efficiently. But we think that it's important to have like a sort of concentrated and sort of multi-stakeholder approach in terms of public sector and private sector working together to really make sure that, yes, we can have sort of green infrastructure in place, but that are also locally relevant and tailored to local context. Because, for instance, if I build like a compute infrastructure in, I don't know, just one specific country in Africa, then I won't necessarily solve the issue, right? So we really need to build a network of stakeholders that can work together. And by this, again, I mean companies that are usually the retainers also of the expertise in building this infrastructure, and understanding how we can sort of address these challenges and these gaps at sort of more tailored and local level. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you too. Over also to Dominique. I see you're unmuted.
I think I was already unmuted. Sorry, I didn't mute myself, but I think Julia, she said that well. I have nothing else to add on that specific question.
All right. So apologies if I caught you on the spot. And from some of the other questions, and I know that we are a little bit in a time pressure right now, but one of them is, if do you have any tips for applicants in terms of what would be some of the areas where initiatives that leverage digital technologies to generate value shifts by transforming behaviors and narrative surrounding the nature and climate crises? If you have any examples, maybe from previous work, what could be under this term, how we can unpack this concept? Thank you.
I can take a quick start, but I won't dive into the answer because actually my colleague is the expert on that specific topic. But I think what directly came to my mind from my work experience is that it can be the concept of digital public infrastructure. And I think it's just refers to like, that digital foundation, right? For like digital payment, digital ID. And depending on if, for example, you are in a developing nation, I think you can easily shift transformation of like behaviors with that concept. Like, for example, you can have that digital public infrastructure, DPI, for land governance, which will at that time integrate land record and then link even that land record with IDs, and then also tapping into GIS, geospatial data, and blockchain technology to enhance transparency and secure land right and promote sustainable use. I think that's a very key example of how by doing that, like you can leverage from that to drive the change in the country. But that really very much applied to a developing setting. But yeah, I'll just pause here. But I'm happy also to provide links in regard to DPI and other concepts that can support that or back up that answer.
Thank you so much, Dominique. And yes, looking forward to the links. And in that case, there's also one more, I think, very relevant question, moving back to the AI. If you have any tips for applicants who struggle with data access, so how to start developing some AI models when you're facing the lack of available data, what would be your advice for people who are in this situation, maybe as a starting company, as a starting startup?
Yeah, thank you so much, Pavel and colleagues. Yeah, I mean, this is something that we sort of as background on this, we identified as one of the most pressing challenges currently that is currently being faced by startups, especially in the early kind of development when we run the startup acceleration pilot. And we basically sort of, run this assessment needs through, particularly with the 5 finalists that then sort of went also in the training program. And we saw that one of the main challenges was, of course, how to sort of access data, how to really make sure that they can build solutions that are locally relevant. And I mean, this is something that, again, works sort of through the sort of approach of understanding how the private sector can help in this, especially because most of the time private sector, like companies, are developing and training their models on like open source softwares and sort of systems. And so, our sort of understanding of what the startups found useful is really to really get in contact with the companies that are working on open source models and can really gather data then on databases that are available and that they can freely access. And they can also train their models through this sort of open source databases. And some of the companies that are already doing this are in developed countries, but they are also in the African context, as we saw from sort of the pilot programs that we run through the AI Hub. So definitely, I think, again, here, I think it's a matter of understanding how the sort of private sector could be involved in the development and deployment of AI models.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Julia. And unless there was anything else that you would like to add, Theo or Dominique? All right.
None for me. None for me. It's all been said by Julia and Dominique. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. I would like to thank you all so much for sharing your insights and your expertise on this topic from different perspectives, but all related to today's deep dive webinar. This was the 5th deep dive and the final one. So with this, as we are wrapping up, also for the sake of time, I would like to thank all the participants who joined today and the previous deep dives, but also to all our UNDP colleagues and other partners from UN agencies and also other organizations who supported us during all the deep dive sessions. Today, also directly thank you to Dominique, Theo, and Julia, and also a big thanks to all our interpreters. Thank you, Yara, Eloisa, Jordan, Noor, and Leila. Finally, also, before we fully wrap up, let me bring up some of the important points related to Youth for Climate. First and foremost, the call for solution, as we said in the beginning, is open now with the deadline of May 26th. So there are 2 more months to apply. But please, if you are considering the application, if you meet the criteria, do not leave the submission for the last day. At the same time, I really advise you to use the Youth for Climate platform as a starting point for your application. You can also find all the other information, the guidelines. You can find the deep dive recordings, and also you can stay in touch with Youth for Climate and with the community. It is a community of over 22,000 people who actively engage. So you have a lot of things to share and learn from each other. At the same time, the Youth for Climate, as part of the Call for Solutions, will be offering some other sessions, including one-on-one sessions. And there's also an FAQ section for some of the questions that get asked very often. And there's also a part where you can post your own questions and you will receive a reply from us. So if anything about the process is still unclear, please do reach out. Finally, also the platform features stories of the previous awardees. As I said, there is 100 solutions that already have been awarded. So you can also learn and see some of the inspiration similar to the one that Theo presented today. Thank you so much for that, Theo. Finally, also linking back to what Dominique talked about, the Youth for Climate platform also holds the space for NDC consultations. So you can join the regional consultation on meaningful youth engagements in NDCs, which is organized in cooperation with UNGO, International Indigenous Youth Forum on Climate Change, and United Nations Development Program. So head on to the platform. You can also join this conversation and you can engage and take an active part in shaping the nationally determined contributions, which, as we heard today, are the backbone of the Paris Agreement. With that, and for all of us at the Youth for Climate and all the speakers, thank you again for your questions, for the lively engagement. Good luck with your applications and hopefully stay in touch at the platform, LinkedIn or Instagram. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.